Alright, so welcome to this special edition of the TSD Multimedia Video Podcast. This is John here with... Oh, Dan's not here. But I am here with someone else. I am at the Billy Jones Wildcat Railroad with their executive director. That's still your title, right?
Oh, yeah.
Peter Panacy. And he's going to tell us today about this new locomotive they got. And I know it's not really new, because we've had it since last year, but this, I think, is the first official opening of steam season that number 5 has participated in, isn't it?
Yeah, it has. This is the first time that number 5 has debuted a steam season here at the Billy Jones Wildcat Railroad. We did debut it last July after receiving it roughly 1 year ago. And that was a great day. We actually did the first steam doubleheader with the number 5 and the number 2 that had ever been performed at Billy Jones Wildcat Railroad, either here in Oak Meadow Park or up on Billy's Ranch. But with the number 2 down, getting cylinders repaired down in Hillcrest near Fresno, the number 5 takes over, and this will be the debut of steam season with the number 5 at the helm. And today I'm firing up this locomotive and finishing up what's been a great weekend so far.
Yeah, and I figured what we could do here this morning is, Dan and I were out yesterday filming run-bys, and I figured to get Peter to show us what's different about the number 5 compared to the number 2. If you remember, the number 2 is a little smaller than this one. Not sure if you can tell just looking at it, but we had a feature on the Steam in Los Gatos DVD that we put out a number of years ago, firing up the number 2. So if you want to get more detail about what the number 2 is, that would be a good place to look.
Alright, so right here, the number 5 is a 462 Pacific style locomotive. Compared to our number 2, which is a 262 Prairie, the Pacific class, it's much heavier, it's much longer, you'll notice it's much bigger. When you compare them side by side, the 2 is dwarfed. Now, with the bigger size comes a number of different challenges. For one, we have to be much more careful when we're out on the line because we are pulling, or not pulling, but we are handling a larger locomotive in comparison to the 2. That means we have to be very careful on our turntable, which is just big enough to hold this thing. We also have to be cautious about what we're doing in the station, out on the line, that sort of stuff. But the advantages are there too. I mean, as it's heavier, you definitely get a lot more traction because all that weight means that you're capable of transferring that steam pressure through your tractive force onto the ground, and you're able to pull things much more easily than the number 2. This type of locomotive, which was built in Marshall, Wisconsin by Merrick Light Railway Equipment Company, this thing can hold 10, 11 cars no sweat. And upgrades just as sharp as ours, around turns just as sharp as ours. So it's really overbuilt for what we do here, which is great. That means we can run this thing really easily. Don't really have to worry about making these big runs up the hill like we do with the number 2. It's really, really a pleasure to have that type of power that you're sitting on. But it also, like I said, it does offer its own challenges. For one, inside the 5, it's a full cab experience. You're inside the locomotive as opposed to the 2 where you're almost looking like you're sitting on top of it. You're sitting in the cab, you're looking down the length of the boiler instead of over the cab like you would with the 2. And you got to be careful about your sight lines and what you're looking at. The firing, it's pretty much the same concept as the number 2. You're atomizing fuel oil through a burner and vaporizing it. You ignite that, creates a sheet of flame, and then you've got this big sheet of flame burning inside your firebox that's heating up water, and as that water starts to boil, you capture that water, or capture that steam rather, and direct it to your pistons, and that's pretty much all there is to it. It's a complicated yet simple technology that we rely upon very, very well here. Now, one of the key differences about this locomotive that I really like is you'll notice here right underneath the throttle, you'll see the actual throttle valve. Right there, that's your throttle. Now the pipe, the dry pipe, comes through here from the back end of the boiler. That throttle valve opens your steam supply, and it's redirected back through the boiler, almost like a superheater, all the way through into your branch pipes, further right underneath your stack and in your smoke box. Now, what's nice about this, for one, you get the superheated effect, so that steam gets reheated as it goes through the boiler. But also, let's say hypothetically, you need to adjust your throttle, repack it, whatever. This is easy access. Now, most locomotives, what they have up here is your throttle is actually located underneath your steam dome. And anybody who's ever done maintenance on one of these things will know that accessing your throttle through your steam dome can be a pain in the neck. You know, you're upside down trying to reach in there in a confined space, whereas this is on the back end of the locomotive. Very nice. Now, you also see a couple of differences here. The 462 configuration, very, very, very nice to have for sharper turns. The 262, that pilot truck, when it absorbs a turn, takes a lot of strain. But the 462 configuration, those 4 pilot wheels really, really help divert all that strain that's put on by going into a sharp radius. These specific locomotives, when they're going up and down the coast of the United States, they encountered a lot more turns than you say with a prairie locomotive like the number 2. Prairie was just designed for a straight shot across the plain. So the 462 configuration is very nice for that. A couple other things that are really nice about this, I mean, we have our standards built in, we don't really use them. The number 2, they are pretty much just veneer, but these are practical, we can use them if we so desire. Our marker lights on both sides of the locomotive are hardwired using that copper tubing as conduit. When we do all of our boiler maintenance, all we have to do is pop open the front door, the lid right here, remove the petticoat pipe, which is very easy, punch out our boiler, very, very, very simple. The number 2, we have to actually take off the back head, take out the refractory brick that acts as a baffle, and even that will take a half an hour before you even run a rod through it. Very nice to have that. Maintenance friendly. All the bearings on here, instead of back bearings like the number 2, these are all roller bearings. Much more efficient, much easier to maintain, much more durable. So again, we're cutting down on the maintenance. We're making things very, very simple. And again, something that will actually perpetuate the life of this locomotive for a very, very, very long time. Now, you'll see in here, this is more of a traditional style boiler than the number 2. You'll actually see the bottom end of your firebox drops down below, kind of like a shotgun here. And you'll have a traditional stay-bolted, fusible plug boiler, as opposed to the number 2, which you can't see here because, like I said, it's being maintained on. But the number 2 boiler, the Vanderbilt style, you don't have that. It's a round style firebox. So this is actually more traditional, much more efficient. You can transfer your heat a lot easier with a boiler of this configuration. Now, I did mention it does have fusible plugs. If at any time that water level drops too far, those plugs will melt. Your wet steam inside there, because when you get lower, steam gets more wet, will put out your fire, and you're no longer in danger. It's a nice safety feature to have on these things. But yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful piece. It's got an electrical setup that controls all your cab lights. I can light up anything inside the cab that I want. So if we're running this thing at night, turn on lights, check my gauges. I can even turn on a light to check to see if my injector's picking up. So I say, okay, great, I've got water going. So the work that American Light Railway Equipment Works put into this was first class, top notch. And you'll see some of the details as you go along. But just one thing that I like to point out, you see these bolts on the running boards. Each one of them, the heads, all facing the same way. Same thing on the other side. So the craftsmanship that went into this is definitely something that you notice. And so inside the cab, I mentioned that this was a full cab experience, and compared to the number 2, there's so much more stuff going on in here. For the person who doesn't have much experience running a steam locomotive, it would be a little bit overwhelming. But if you know what's going on, you have a pretty good indication of what you can do here. We'll start left to right. Your atomizer and blower valve located right here. Very traditional setup. Now in the number 2, there's no gauges. You have no idea, aside from the look of the stack and the sound of the fire, what your atomizer and blower are doing. Here you actually have a PSI indicator showing you what exact pressure that you're running both your atomizer and your blower at. There's also a regulator so that your volume remains the same The number 2 doesn't have that. Very, very nice configuration. Different firing valve on the number 2. It's over by the engineer's side. This is a more traditional setup where your firing valve is actually on the fireman's side. So that gives you the option of either running it solo or having a fireman fire the locomotive in that traditional setup. Again, making this for, it's a very, very flexible type operation. Now moving further to the right, typical sight glass, typical blowdown for your sight glass. Nothing too special there. Hydrostatic lubricator to run the lubrication to your air compressor. Now your brake system right here indicates your main reservoir, what you've got in your tanks, and also has needles indicating both your engine brake and your train brake. The number 2 only has an indicator for how much is in the reservoir and what you're putting into the train. You have no idea on the number 2 what your brake application is for the locomotive itself. Now you move over further to your right. I did mention already the valve for the throttle being outside of the locomotive, easier to work on, running that pipe back through the boiler, reheating that steam. You have 2 pressure gauges, 2 mains. This is your main boiler pressure. You also have a secondary. Now at night, this can be illuminated and you can actually get an idea of what your pressure is without having to take a flashlight or some sort of light up there and take a look. You also have a steam exhaust and a steam chest admission. Now this tells you how hard you're working your locomotive. If you've got 150 psi in your main and you're only pulling about 60-75 psi in your admission, you're not working the locomotive that hard. But let's say you've got 150 in here and you're at about 140 there, well, you're working what you got. And that's a good indication on how hard you're really working this thing. And a steam chest exhaust, if you can keep a couple of PSI in that at all times, you'll never have any scoring inside your pistons. Nice way to keep a little positive pressure in there. So those gauges, again, you wouldn't see these on the number 2. You'd only see your main steam gauge.
I noticed that they have the name of the railroad right on the gauge. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, custom made just for us. We love that. Your traditional engine train brake, top to bottom, similar configuration to what we have with the 2. Your cylinder cocks is actually an air pneumatic actuated valve. Your sander control if you need it. I mentioned this. This is a light for your right injector. You have one over here for your left. And then Johnson bar, similar situation. It's a wall starts type, just like the number 2. And then I mentioned everything about being electrical. We have an actual electrical manifold up here on the top right. It's controlled by a battery that is charged by an alternator as we run. Everything else pretty straightforward. You have your injector controls. You have steam supply to your firing manifold. We'll eventually switch over to steam once I hit about 100 psi. I have my air compressor throttle valve cracked just a little bit to warm up the air compressor and clear out all that excess condensate. That's that hissing noise that you hear right now. In a little while I'll actually close off some of the drain cocks on there and build up a little bit of pressure so that I'll have brake power when we're ready to go. Dual blowdowns, one here, one here. This blowdown blows straight down. You'll notice this one is capped off. The reason for that is that steam will blow out directly to the side. Now under a regular operation, that wouldn't be that big of a deal. But considering that we are in a public park and we do have a lot of bystanders, passengers that are getting on and off the train, walking by, people on bikes or whatever, the need for a side blowdown, probably not a good idea. So we cap it off. We keep it there in case you do need it, but you have to be conscious of what you're trying to do. You can't turn that thing on unless you remove that thing, so it's just a safety precaution. Now, probably the best way to compare these 2 locomotives side by side right now is to take a look at the tenders. Now, the number 2's tender over there, considerably smaller, not as neat. It's old. It works. It does what it needs to do. But the tender that we're sitting on, we've got a fuel indicator, a voltage indicator, an hour meter, all this sort of stuff telling us what we need to do and what we need to know. Your main power sits below the seat. We also have a fuel pump that's electrically hooked up to keep a constant flow of fuel flowing from the fuel tank in through the fuel piping and inside into the burner. Now back here on the actual tender itself, you have your fuel inlet. The fuel tank sits right about here. and then you have your water tank. Now this little Y bracket has a purpose, not just for look or anything, but this tender is considerably longer than the number 2 configuration. So when we're taking on fuel and water outside by our water tower on the pad, when we line up our blowdown, when we line up our fuel, everything lines up perfectly. The problem is that the spout from the water tower sits about right here. Well, that didn't work for us. We actually have a pipe that's outside there, you'll see that, which directs water right into your tank. I noted the rear marker lights. Again, these are wired so that we can actually put them to use. And I still got my battery tender hooked up. Figure I won't start draining the battery until we're out that way. But anyway, much longer of a locomotive. If you recall coming down here with the 2, we wouldn't be standing back here at the back end of the locomotive. We'd be way up there. So you get an idea how much longer this is. And you see just all that stuff you have to go into knowing just the size of this thing when you're operating it, in addition to the challenges that are faced by being in the cab, different firing system, even though it's still the same fuel and everything. And you're dealing with a locomotive that's overly efficient, whereas the 2 was just efficient enough. So it's definitely different, but it's a pleasure to run.
Go this way, Bjorn.
That's good to go. Gauge glass ready to go. Our water level's fine. Check all of our vitals. We're sitting pretty at 150 psi. Fire, nice low and orange. I like a low fire personally. Gauge glass, we're sitting there right about at that second nut just below, which is fine. Right here, that's the top of my boiler, as indicated by this bottom of this latch. Top of the elbow. And away we go for our test run. Slowly crack open the throttle. Try my best to keep an eye on the stack. Just achieve a slight haze gray from what I can see out of my cab window. I'm going to leave my cylinder cocks open all the way until about halfway on the bridge. After that, I'll go ahead and close them back up. I'm looking in my rearview mirror. I've got all my cars attached. I'm happy. Looking ahead, the gates are already down. Nice to see that those are working. I won't give these kids a bath here. I'll be nice. Fill those right away. Right about here. Close down on my throttle. Let gravity do the work. Hang out and enjoy the ride. Check again all my vitals. Water's okay. Approach is just fine. This thing notched up, Johnson bar. You don't necessarily need to run it in the corner unless you really, really want to. Just up a little bit of the tree. Gun is on. Approach the switch here. See that we're heading to the right of the Y. So I'm going to open up throttle a little bit, give myself a little more fuel. Yes, I am injecting going uphill. However, this locomotive is so efficient that I can afford to do that. It's kind of nice. Down my fire. Go around this curve, and this is sharp. It's about a 1% downgrade, so I can close my throttle right now. Let gravity do most of the work. It's 1%, and at the apex of this tree, it's a 0.5%. How do I know that? Well, I built this one. I surveyed all that.
That's the benefits of being the guy that did the track, huh?
Yeah, I like to go slow through here, so I'm not putting a lot of wear and tear on this sharp radius. In an ideal world, we'd expand it, but we can't. Vasona sprinklers are right there, so whatever. Now as we start to flatten out, they'll start to open up, and we'll actually start to put this thing to work. And this is where you'll want to check out the steam chest admission. When we get up to that hill, you'll see it a little bit more. So I'm going to open up my throttle. Also compensate by increasing my amount of fuel inside the firebox. This thing will start to work a little bit more. Now if I had a fireman doing this, he'd be responding to me. We'd be talking back and forth. I'd be saying, okay, I'm opening up in, 3, 2, 1, and I'd open up, he'd increase, or she'd increase the amount of fuel going into the firebox. Okay, shutting down, and I'd shut down, and the fireman would do the exact same thing. But it's a one-person operation. It's kind of easier in that sense because you know exactly what you're going to do. You know when you're going to open up, when you're going to shut down. You've got all that figured out. The problem is you got to multitask more. In the old days, if you were an old salty engineer, all you wanted to do was pull the throttle. Well, that's easy. Anybody can pull a throttle. Firing a locomotive is the essence of it. If you want to understand a locomotive, you want to know what it does, what it can't do, you fire it. So I'm going to start opening up a little bit more here. You see, I'm increasing my fuel, and it's going to get louder in here because that fire is going to be making a lot more noise. I'm going to be adjusting my time, throwing the Johnson bar into the corner, almost into the corner. open up an injector. Before I start running away with my train, I'll put in a little bit of a brake set. Adjust my fire. Don't need that much smoke coming out. Try to get that nice, slight haze gray. Knock back on my Johnson bar a little bit. I don't need to send all that steam down into my pistons. Move a little bit. Got about a 15, 20 pound set right now on the car brakes. It's just fine. If I needed a hard stop, I can apply more, and I can also use the steam to backpedal me. And I can see I'm starting to slow down. You feel it. Release the brakes, let gravity do the work for you. Use my Johnson bar as such. I'll let the gun run for a little while as my water drops from that ascent. Look at my approach going up towards that grade over there. Everything looks clear to me. It doesn't look like there's any bystanders, anybody that might put themselves in danger of getting in the way. So, at this point, as I'm starting to go back uphill, same thing applies. Open up the throttle, increase my fuel. I realize my gun is still on. I'm going to try to knock my pressure down just a hair. Find that nice little happy spot in the throttle and fuel settings. I can feel myself picking up speed. Kill my gun. You turn it off, you turn the steam off first, then the water. You turn it on, it's the exact opposite. You always want water on that side of the piston because it absorbs the heat. My approach to this grade crossing is clear. Keeping an eye on it while opening up throttle. Signal bell for the approach. When I start to open up, I'm doing more fuel, more throttle. Now this grade's actually pretty sharp. So here's where you might want to try to get some of the admission. You obviously aren't seeing how hard this thing is working right now because we don't have a full line of passengers. Now I'm pushing almost 90 psi in my admission. That's telling me how hard I'm working this thing right now. Now I've pressed it, close down on my throttle, close down on my fuel valve. Find a nice little haze gray in the stack. Just going to crack the throttle slightly. My switch is clear from this side. My water level is nice and happy. Switch is clear, thank you. Okay, turn on my bell because we're approaching the station. Let everybody know we're coming back in. We're going to go on a slight upgrade here, so my throttle's kind of in a nice happy zone. So I'm going to open it just ever so slightly. Compensate also by a slight increase in fuel. One of the idiosyncrasies about this locomotive, the Johnson bar loves to run down into the corner on its own. I keep an eye on that, but whatever. It happens. Down my throttle, I don't need to choke everybody. Just let it kind of crack and happy. Coast all the way in. Got my sight lines of where approximately I want to stop. About here. 30 pounds set in the brakes. Look at my situation, what my vitals are. Cut down on my fuel, inject some water because I can't. Finicky. Bit. I'm happy.
And that's how it's done.
Yeah. Simple. For the most part, simple.
Yeah.